This episode of the Tougies Take podcast is dedicated to the life and memory of Chris Snow. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Tougies Take podcast. We are back again. It is us, the guys, the fellas, myself, Endo Mills, one sim for the win, and joining us today. He's rather large on TikTok. He's the mayor of Sven Tougie. For those that have followed along the Twitch GeoGuessr exploration over the years, a co-host for the NHL podcast. That name, by the way, I'm jealous. On the hockey news, of course. And now going by... Okay, really quickly. Can you explain the new Twitter handle and where it came from?
So it's Rahil the Thrill. I can't get into specifics because stuff hasn't been finalized yet. Ooh, foreshadowing. But I was just like, hey, I need something that's a little less tongue-in-cheeky. And Crash Andrews out of nowhere from the top ropes just like, hey, what about Rahil the Thrill? And I was just like, trademark, get my lawyers. I don't have lawyers, but get my lawyers, lock it in. It's the perfect name. So, yeah, Rahil the Thrill now. I'm glad you like it, it sounds like, at least.
I do, and a strong contribution by Crash Andrews. That just I had to set it up so that he could pat himself on the back, a little bit, you know. But Rahil, it is awesome to have you on the show today. And as we were just talking about a second ago, we have a lot to talk about as we're going to be breaking down the Atlantic Division, kind of previewing that. Of course, it's an interesting division. Your Montreal Canadiens, Endo's Toronto Maple Leafs, my Boston Bruins, and who we think will do the best out of the three. I'm excited to talk about that. But we had to make sure that we got some viewer questions in there, right? That's how we always start off this show before getting into some general topics, and then we'll get into that division breakdown. Of course, as always, we'll just get it out of the way now. We got so much to get to. I want to make sure I don't forget anything. This podcast is brought to you by our lovely friends at Manscaped.com. I want to remind you that you can use code Tougie, that's Tougie, for 20% off your order and free shipping. Manscaped.com, the peak, the pinnacle, the best in men's grooming. Once again, Manscaped.com. Let's get to some of those viewer questions here. I'm excited. The first one comes from a returning person after some time away. Our good friend, a rogue pineapple.
Piney, top rope, let's go!
Who asks us each, in your best Don Cherry impersonations, can you explain the birds and the bees?
Oh my god. Sin, go ahead. Just take it away. We can't
explain it like he's 5.
Explain the birds and the
bees as Don Cherry.
You know, when two good Canadians love each other, oh boy, sometimes the male's gotta put his penis in the female's vagina.
His penis.
That's how babies are made.
So I think Sin forgot the part, Tougie, where you said 5-year-old. I'm a little concerned right now.
A 5-year-old has a penis or a vagina, boy. They better learn.
What a start.
Oh,
I can't go second there. I'm going to let you two gear Endo. One of you guys go there because I can't follow that up.
I'm gonna give you the option of Don Cherry or Gilbert Gottfried.
Please do Gilbert Gottfried. Yeah. Please. I need more of that in my life.
When a mother and a father love each other very much, the father takes his cock and balls and he puts it right up her pussy. 9 months later, a baby is made. Holy fuck, that's exhausting.
Holy fuck. I'm at a loss for words. This was the greatest start to a podcast I've ever been a part of.
This is the part where you regret saying you'll come on the show.
In the background, I'm blocking all you guys so you can never ask me again.
Oh my god.
I can't do Mike Babcock. I definitely can't do Gil. I'm trying to think of like
holy shit.
I'm trying to think of like the Mike Babcock, like,
Ron McLean.
You got the father over here, You got the mother over here. and you know, sometimes things just happen. And your brother, that's where your brother came from. I didn't think I could do Mike Babcock until then.
And your brother. It's like, whoa, Mike. Jeez, I know you're from fucking Sask, but come down.
Holy, I want to see Tougies.
Oh my God, I can't at this point. Jesus.
Jack Edwards. There you go.
Jack Edwards.
Just talk like this.
Who the fuck is that?
Fucking
Jack Edwards.
No,
It wasn't Jack.
Oh, who was that?
That was his brother.
It was the it was the wrestler who talked like fucking like, I was in the bay and I was on the helicopter with fucking Demo Dink Marcinko.
I have no idea. I don't watch wrestling.
What the fuck
So.
is that?
And honestly, if someone's listened past this 6-minute mark, I'm going to be speechless at this point. Like,
Holy hell.
No, this is
Remember when
prime
I said
YouTube content.
Yeah, remember when I said it's a hockey podcast? It's not really a hockey podcast.
Yeah.
Oh God, I can't, the problem is like I could go with the Don Cherry. I can't top Sins though, in terms of content.
I mean,
Jesus.
just, at this point, we've all done someone different. You could also just go out of left field and give us like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of who else is there or who you could do.
I got nothing. I don't want to be the boring one here, but Jesus Christ, I got nothing. I'm still rattled by the first.
Dude, he's just trying to think. He's like, I can't think of anyone.
My brain is just locked up right now. We'll come back to it. We'll come back.
Okay, we'll hold you to that.
Please do. Goodness. Our next question from... yeah, that was the first one, by the way. God. Oh, goodness. Would you rather win the Stanley Cup as a player, but be injured for the whole season in the playoffs? Did you even win? You just got carried at that point. Or win the Stanley Cup as a GM, but you only became the GM after the trade deadline? Bonkers scenario, but just say it's a possibility. I mean, as the GM, like you didn't even get your name on the cup unless they make an exception.
Yeah.
Say the Leafs win the cup this year. Jake Muzzin's not going to play at all. He could get his name on the cup, or at least his day with the cup, if the team's like, hey, we still want to do that. Mm-hmm. But by default, he wouldn't. So let me be the GM that inherits Steve Yzerman's Tampa Bay Lightning and wins back-to-back Stanley Cups, please.
Yeah,
who's disagreeing with that?
100%. No one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other thing too that's a little bit better when you're the GM is at the draft you get to go up and hi everybody, like do the little like gloat and toad a little bit, like whereas if you're an injured player you're just like, okay, whatever.
Well, yeah, and all night it's like I want to congratulate this guy. I want to congratulate this team on their Stanley Cup victory, and you're just sitting there at the table like, yeah, I did it. It's like you didn't do anything.
Hell yeah.
Exactly.
Delightful. So, clear-cut answer there. From Reds Rebels, no other way to phrase this than how we wrote it. What the fuck is the WHL doing? How many incidents are too many? So we were going to talk about this
racism,
a little bit.
Racism, love basically. It. Bah, you get it. I get the most out of anybody here except for Rahil. Let's go. Let's go. Man. You get a slur. Everyone gets a slur.
Everybody gets a slur. Look under your chairs. It's another slur.
It's an N-word with a hard R.
Oh my God.
Well, there we go. We went to the Oprah. There you go. Perfect. To explain what's happened in the WHL over the past couple of weeks. First and foremost, there was the Lethbridge Hurricanes hiring Bill Peters, who of course was, let go from the NHL back in 2019 after Akeem Alou spoke his truth, and then more stories came out about Bill Peters beyond the Akeem Alou story. Carolina Hurricanes legend Michael Jordan, sharing the fact that he used to fucking kick him on the bench, among other things. Then, earlier this week, the WHL suspended the Wenatchee Wilds head coach, that's the former Winnipeg Ice who moved to Washington State, They suspended head coach Kevin Constantine indefinitely for violating league relations and policies. According to Ryan Kennedy of the Hockey News, the allegation against Constantine stems from a racial slur. And then today, the WHL's Red Deer Rebels named their leadership group, which includes their captain, Kai Uchaz. Now, that name won't be familiar to most because he went undrafted. He is a 20-year-old player. But if you do remember his name, it is likely because back in the just before the 2020-2021 season, he and another player were removed from the Seattle Thunderbirds roster after racially bullying the team's lone black player. Quote, Uchaz and the other player reportedly taunted Mackay Sanders horribly, calling him a racial slur and waving a banana in front of him.
Wow.
Yep.
After sitting out the entire season, Uchaz was traded to Red Deer, and the WHL permitted him to return for the 21-22 season. He was required to undergo further training and education on anti-racism, equity, adversity, inclusion, so on and so forth. You know, the guy wasn't canceled. He was given a second chance. He's still an active player in the WHL. But maybe, just maybe, you don't name that guy captain.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
you
maybe.
send the racist to Red Deer. What a great place to go. And I look up racism in Red Deer. Second article, Red Deer needs to face its racist problem. Nice.
Well, they faced it in the wrong way, I guess, Endo. I mean, I guess you and I aren't going to a Red Deer Rebels game anytime soon.
Oh, no. Nah, not at all. I'm avoiding that. Ugh.
I got nothing for this at this point. You know,
More of the same. I mean, we expected at this point, and that's fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, the only thing I can think of is, like, it generates buzz in the worst way possible, and maybe some people are just like, you know what? Hey, my team's getting talked about. If you're the owner, you're like, I don't care, but that's beyond messed up, man. Like, I just, especially as you mentioned, Tougie, like, all three of those have happened since basically, I think, like, May of this year, maybe a bit earlier, but, like, it's basically just been back to back to back.
right. Yeah, it's I mean, it's fucked up. And I mean, you know, the fact is, like, people have joked about it. Shit, we've joked on this podcast about, you know, the Texas of the North, in terms of some of those provinces. And shout out to Red Deer, Alberta, home of the next Freedom Convoy, is my presumption at this stage. So
Probably not wrong.
Not at all.
That's fun.
Not at all.
Not at all.
How we went from Gilbert Godfrey explaining the birds and the bees to that, I don't know, but that is a staple of this show.
Gilbert Godfrey explains racism. So you have no...
No, continue.
Keep going. We'll just do the whole round again. Everyone do their voice from before.
No,
Yeah,
I'm not
I don't know if this is going to end well.
This is not going to end
Those
well.
Pico liberals, they don't know when to shut up. Let the
Oh my
kid play
fucking God.
hockey.
Oh my fucking God. Speaking of pinko liberals, I will say one thing. Last night I had a game where I played hockey, you know, at our beer league game. We beat the team like 9-3. We were up like 6-1 in like the second period. Their captain, I assume, who's literally this fucking old man with a fucking pinko tinted visor, takes a slap shot at the buzzer. It's already gone. And he's like, yeah, that's it. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I know we're beating the piss out of them, but like, come on. And then I got ran into by the same fucking pinko liberal fucking visor wearing motherfucker. Like, we're up 9-3. Why are you running the goalie? We
Wearing a visor like a Swede.
Yeah, it's half tilted up like fucking Leo Komarov, Matt Martin, yeah.
Afraid to go into the corners and fight for what's theirs. Hockey. Anyway,
I'm the goalie. Why are you fighting me in the corner? I'm in the
have some heart.
My heart per 60 is not high enough.
I'm trying to think of like the perfect example of like a Canadian goaltender from the 90s where it would have been like, get to the corner like fucking Darren Poopa.
Ray Emery.
Ray Emery, yeah, that's a good one.
Ray Emery.
Our final question comes from AJ. One defunct TV channel that you wish would come back. His vote as a big racing fan is the Speed channel, which was a racing centric channel. That, or I'll give you the easy out of like, hey, what's something that you used to watch where you're like, ooh, that needs to come back. Yeah, a defunct TV channel that you wish would come back.
I don't even know what's on TV anymore because I don't own a TV or pay for cable. Dude, don't we all just stream and pirate now? Like
basically, the only one that comes from
pirate. Are you dressed up like Jack Sparrow and gyrating while watching TV?
Yeah.
Arr, I be seeing all the TV shows.
There's a joke about booty to be made there.
The only TV channel I can even remotely think of, and I don't know if I think it was US too. It's like they might still be around, like Spike TV.
Spike TV is gone.
That?
Yeah,
it was like the manly channel where it was like, remember, like 1,000 Ways to Die and like Deadliest War. No, what's it?
Deadliest Warrior
on that channel. Yeah,
TNA Impact.
That was a pretty cool channel, but like.
Yeah, damn. I was gonna say Deadliest Warrior for my show that I wish would come back because that was such a fantastic show. I loved it.
Although the fight animations were always terrible because the second one team loses one, you knew someone was gonna die on the other team. It was so predictable. Mm-hmm. That was a fun show. I like that. I like that answer, Sam.
That was the like perfect dumb show to just burn 40 minutes on. It was the best.
Oh man, Pro versus Joe was pretty sick too.
Oh my god, that was a good one too.
I love the hockey episodes and people just beat the fuck out of them. No one knew how to skate. It was so good.
That was good.
God. Yeah, there was who the hell was that? There was that episode where it's like, can you beat somebody? They had that, right? Like, can you beat this guy in a fight, essentially, or can you like survive it? Like, I remember at one point it was like, oh, here, can you survive for like 30 seconds without Kurt Angle beating you?
Bully Beatdown was on Spike too. Yeah. Oh my god. It was like you get in the ring with like professional trained MMA fighters. Like, oh, this guy bullied me, so I'm gonna get this like literal like trained like murderer to go and fight this bully. And like there was only one where the bully actually had a pretty decent chance. And then like it's so fun.
Yeah, I wish that show was on. I'd get a couple people in the ring there. I got some ideas.
We are all in agreement then. Bring back Spike TV from like circa 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just looked it up right now. It was season 1 had Goldberg for NFL, WCW, WWE. It's like, yeah, you got to get past each sport, and it was really fucking hilarious. They had hockey, but what was that?
I looked up episodes of Bully Beatdown, and literally one of them, the MMA fighter, was Daniel Cormier.
Oh man.
Hey, you bullied me in grade 10. Now you gotta go up against Daniel Cormier for 30 seconds.
Dual division heavyweight or dual division UFC champion, fucking Olympian. Yeah, just get in there with that guy.
No big
don't
deal.
Don't be a shithead. Get in there.
Man.
Spike TV.
It was great. Man vs. Wild was on there too.
Oh, that was a good one too.
Yeah. Every fucking episode, he'd find out a way to like not have any water just so he can drink his own piss.
Turns out he wasn't trying to survive. He just had a kink.
Guess I had to drink my own urine. He's just like, ah. I think here in Canada would probably be the score. The score also was like the Canada. It was also the channel for WWE at the time.
Yeah,
as well. And the score still exists now, but it's mostly just a social media page and everything.
It's like an online brand now. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they used to, they did WWE. They actually had hockey games too. Like they would get like the like non-Canadian team matchups and stuff like that. So when you get bored of like, if it was Leafs Ottawa, and I'm like, hey, I'm a Montreal fan. I don't care. Go watch like Pittsburgh beat Columbus or something. I don't know. But it was good.
With that, we will thank you guys for the questions. And Piney, that was a very strong return to the viewer questions segment. Like I mentioned, we have a couple of things that I wanted to talk about before talking about the Atlantic Division. And the first is what's gone on in the preseason. To me, there have been two notable things. One, last night was the debut of one Connor Bedard, who the hype train's real. When I presume you guys all saw the overtime saucer pass that he had to Athanasiou, which was a good pass, but the hype is out of control, and maybe rightfully so, when people are acting like that was a top 10 pass of all time in a preseason game. Yeah. But he did look incredible, and of course he did. But the other big thing to talk about is Mark Stone and Hayden Hodgson. And there is one man in particular who I know that wanted to talk about this. Sin for the win. The floor is yours. Please explain to the class what happened and your thoughts on this incident.
Well, basically, it's, in the middle of a preseason game. It's pucks, in the corner. People are forechecking, digging at it. Puck goes on Mark Stone's stick, and looks like he makes a move to go along the boards with it, try to get rid of it, but he gets absolutely crushed by Hodgson against the boards, and then has a post game where he basically trashes on the kids. He's like, "Oh, I'll probably never play against him again," and, just absolutely whining about a hit. So this all comes down to kind of like in baseball, how there seems to be these unwritten codes and unwritten rules of things you're not allowed to do. Like, you're not allowed to now hit in preseason. You're not allowed to play hard in preseason because the, quote, games don't matter. Then don't fucking play if you don't want to get hit. There's people out there trying to make a team. They have to prove their worth. You think back to that big hit in, a training camp hit regarding the Leafs, where that one dude absolutely blew someone up. And, and everyone was completely torn about that. It's like, you can't on one hand tell these people, you got to make the team, you got to make an impact and things like that. And then, have this thing where but not like that. You cannot have your cake and eat it. And Mark Stone just won a fucking Stanley Cup because his team plays hard. They dominate 5-on-5 oftentimes, and they're fucking physical. So how are you going to piss and moan in post-game about getting hit by someone who wants something, like you wanted that Stanley Cup, someone who's willing to go out and try to earn it? And I just think it's such a crappy look for a captain of a team, especially, who just won the Stanley Cup, to be pissing and moaning about someone out there trying to work their way onto a line and playing hard. If you don't want to get hit, fucking don't get the puck. And I think he even tried to claim the puck was nowhere near him. It was 2 feet away. You within stick's reach. He just had. It bothers me. I don't know. That's just shit that bothers me. We have to stop this weird mentality of all these unwritten rules and these code of ethics that are sometimes there and sometimes not. It depends on who it is. If that was someone else getting blown up and then they didn't get asked any questions post game, nothing would have happened. There would have been no uproar, nothing. And because it's Mark Stone, he has some things to say. It turns into this whole thing of I don't know. I just don't get it, especially coming from him.
Sin for the win, ladies and gentlemen.
Let me know how you really feel, Sin. I love that, man. That was awesome. I was actually trying to look up the hit because I remember seeing it, but I was trying to get a replay. I can't get it quick enough. But this is someone who's played he's played less than 10 NHL games, I'm pretty sure. He's not an old guy, but he's not a young guy. Did you not expect him to play with a little bit of tenacity trying to make a roster? That's the thing is if you ask me, if I'm an NHL player and I haven't made it for a couple years, I've been, bouncing around the ECHL and stuff like that, and I get a chance, I'm going to do whatever the hell I can to make sure I hold on to that spot and make the team. And if you don't like that I hate you, take the skates off and don't play preseason then. Like you said, Sin, it'd be different if it was the puck was on the other side of the ice, it was a dirty hit. Nothing looked wrong with that hit. I don't know what he was upset about, guys.
I mean, Hayden Hodgson, you kind of mentioned it, 27 years old, 27 years old, has 7 career NHL games at this stage, and that's his game. That is the idea of how a lot of these guys are going to make the team. On one hand, it's kind of like Sim was saying, right? We have the whole idea of, you can't take fighting out of hockey, and then all that nonsense. But at the same time, it's don't play too physically, though. Where is that line? again, that term was thrown out there. Like, you can't have it both ways at this stage. You have to try to decide, like, okay, like, what are you looking for the game to be at this stage? So, it was a weird one. I feel like something like this happens like every time, though. In every preseason, there's always an incident where it's like, oh, is this scrub? And it's like, well, like, it's that idea, though, of someone will label someone like Hayden Hodgson this scrub until you get that guy in the playoffs on a fourth line, and he's the most energetic guy out there. And it's like, well, where would we be without this guy? It's just...
Yeah. And I will, just to add on something, because I'm sure some people will be thinking this, there's recently a hit by Killorn on Zadina at the tail end of one of the preseason games where Zadina got shaken up a little bit. And... despite it being at the tail end of a game, despite it being Killorn, who's probably going to make the team, I really didn't see anything like illegal about the hit, so I don't necessarily had a problem with it. It really sucks if Zadina's actually hurt because he's had problems with that. We're hoping he can make some kind of an impact and, either stick around or we can flip him. But I didn't really see anything wrong with that hit. Like, it's a game, people play to win, and that's part of Killorn's game.
Yeah.
And so I'm not gonna also be like, oh, but wait a second, that was my player, and he may be hurt, and he's someone really counting on. It's like, hey, it's still a hockey game, and if you're Zadina trying to make the team, you should be prepared for shit like that too. I don't care what stage of the game it is. You want to play a full 60 and make it onto a team, you better prove that.
Yeah.
There was one other thing that I wanted to ask you about, Sin, in regards to the Sharks, kind of.
Okay.
And that was the initial waivers that were came out yesterday.
And we didn't pick up Ty Smith. Yeah, it sucks.
Wow, that was quick.
All right.
Why not? Like, what? Why not? Fucking hell, why not? Like, our defense is so shit. Like, hell, we're gonna have Benning on the top too. Throw Ty Smith out there. See if he can, not be a turnover machine. Not, we're going to be a terrible team anyway. I don't understand not picking him up because he's what, 24?
23.
Yeah.
23. He's Zadina's age.
23, makes a league min, was the 17th overall pick in 2018, and in his rookie season was on the rookie team of the year. Mm-hmm. He will likely be playing for the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins this year because nobody claimed him. It's surprising.
It surprises me. Like, you have... Well, like, why not? I don't understand. I don't know if we're already worried about roster spots, but you shouldn't be. And you have, I think that's a really big missed opportunity. And maybe Greer just didn't like him, but I think at this point you're like, hey, can we get that Ty Smith back? Clearly, he needs like a real, I mean, technically he did get a change of scenery moving from New Jersey to Pittsburgh, but at the same time, I don't think he was given that much of a chance in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh was also pretty crap. I can't find his stats offhand, but I don't know. I think he'd probably get a chance to play top 4 if he made the team on the Sharks, maybe even higher. And because he's a good puck mover, his other aspects of the game aren't quite there, but I don't know. I feel like they should have just picked him up. I think there's no downside to it.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing I wanted to talk about before we start talking about the Atlantic, we are a few days away from the launch of NHL 24, and you can't have somebody that covers the NHL 24 scene. Again, check out the NHL podcast on thehockeynews.com, of course. You can't have somebody on the show like that to, of course, not just talk about your Montreal Canadiens, but to also talk about NHL 24 and kind of where we're all at right now in regards to, I'd say, the hype level of it all. The past couple of days, it's been the ratings reveal, which, and then today was the soundtrack as well, which I know Endo was doing a stream earlier before we were recording, going through the soundtrack. I am excited for the game. I will say in regards to those ratings, my hype took a little bit of a hit because as I covered in a series of YouTube videos on the main channel, they're bad. They're bad. You can sit there and argue the individual ratings, the individual attributes especially are rough for a lot of people. A little bit of a damper for me. Endo, really quickly, I'll throw to you because I kind of mentioned the whole soundtrack thing as well. Where are you at in regards to NHL 24? And while music is obviously very subjective, what are your thoughts on the soundtrack since you went through all of it today?
So I will say one thing. Several tracks are missing from the Spotify playlist that was made by Spotify. Let me see. One of the tracks missing was Tom the Mailman's Direct Me and Sum 41's Landmines. Good songs. I would say about 12 out of the 32 songs on there are good songs. 12. Everything else, kind of like, it's. I get it. I don't know. I like fast-paced stuff. There's a lot of filler stuff. There's a lot of, also, like, every year so far, there's always been a few bands that are kind of like, how are you on there? And then I noticed they have like 300 monthly plays. I'm like, that's good exposure for you. I can't really hate that too much. The one thing I've definitely noticed is that the NHL soundtrack itself has mostly been kind of like a way for, smaller bands who are kind of in the same kind of like sphere to get in there as well. Because, they had a song there. And then I think it was a band called Orson Welles last year or 2 years ago had a song in there. And it was a bop. And they had like 200 monthly plays at the time. And now they have like at least 10,000. So it's a good way for them to grow as well too. 100 Gex, we'll say flat out, that is an acquired taste. Probably one of the most notable tracks on there, aside from Fall Out Boy's weird fucking album that came out this year. That reminds me of September. Yeah. Besides that, it's all right. It's all right.
Rahil, at this stage, NHL 24, how are you feeling about all of it?
Okay, so
loaded question.
Seriously, scared to answer this one. I think no matter how good or bad we're feeling about an NHL game, this time of year we're always going to be excited because it's like the only realistic-y feeling NHL game we play, whether it's even if it's an arcade style game, like in terms of actual NHL teams and stuff like that. It's the most realistic one we have. I'm more optimistic and more excited this year. Two specific reasons why. One is I like the changes they're doing. There's going to need to be tweaking to them. They're going to be a mess sometimes. We already saw that with the post gameplay or game test changes. Like there's going to be tweaking and stuff because it's a whole new different style of gameplay. I'm excited for that because it's going to feel different. It's not going to feel like NHL 23 in terms of the gameplay, which leads me to a brief point. Anyone on Twitter who's saying this is just a carbon copy of NHL 23, I'm pretty sure Endo, I was replying to one of your tweets. Someone tweeted it or something. I don't get why they're saying that. It does not feel like the same game to me. Not for the good reason or not for the bad reason, but it doesn't feel like the same game for me. But the other reason I'm more excited is and we've seen glimmers of this before, but this seems a bit more than both like the previous games. The new developers seem very open to being more transparent. They seem very more like, hey, we want to talk to you guys about what we're planning, get feedback from you guys. I was lucky enough to interview both of them for the hockey news and stuff. And they were like, just straight up, like, I was like, wow, like you guys actually kind of care. Oh my God. Like you want to make NHL a good game. And it's easy to fabricate that and just be like, hey, it's going to be, we want to make it good and stuff. But like Chris was talking about the goalie stuff and he's like, I actually play goalie. I want NHL 24 to feel like you're actually playing goalie, which I think that's going to be a welcome change. Is NHL 24 going to be perfect? I don't think so. Is it going to be 100 times better than NHL 23? I don't think so. Am I excited? Yeah, I'm always going to be excited, I think, guys. I think we all kind of are. Like, it's an NHL game.
Yeah, I mean, even if people are just like, oh, I don't think it'll be good, most people are still going to be there. Like, if you care enough to discuss this game on Twitter, on Reddit, on the freaking EA forums, no less, like, who are we trying to kid at this point? Like, we're going to be there, even if it's not so good. There aren't too many people. I'll shout out New, just somebody who, even last night, I was talking to him while we were playing Pro Clubs on FIFA, and he's just like, yeah, no, I don't think it's going to be that good. He's still going to play it. It's like, of course he is, because, number one, it's the only NHL title out there. There are other hockey games out there now at this stage, but it is the only NHL title that's out there. And it's the only AAA hockey game every year, and there's only so much like independent developers can do in regards to hockey games. More often than not, they're more stylistic and we've seen quite a few games like that either come out recently or are in development currently. Yeah, I kind of feel that, right? Just that idea of like, yeah, no, we're going to be there, and it's the hoping for the best side of things, and I think there's a little bit more of a reason to be optimistic than there would have been in years past.
Yeah.
And Chris and Mike are a big part of that. Sin, how are you feeling about the game at the moment before we even get to play it?
Pretty excited, just because I love the gameplay changes. I absolutely love the pressure system. Like, that is such a... I think, you know, if done properly, and I do like that the tweaks that they have announced, and I'm sure they may tweak it a little bit more down the road, but I would love to see them wait at least 1 to 2 months before they make any more tweaks to that after the game launches, because people need to just get used to things.
Yeah.
The beta clearly wasn't long enough for them to get used to it, and as we saw towards the end of the beta, you couldn't get a game because most people just like throw a tantrum like, I don't want to learn, I want to L skate. Like, fucking yeah. So I think that's good. People need time to adjust. I absolutely love it. I'm very, very much looking forward to being able to stomach playing Be a Pro without any major changes to the mode, simply because the gameplay changes, in my opinion, are so good. The new hitting system is great. The fact that you can use every single defensive tool available is great. You can battle in front of the net again. Like, it feels that much better, and I can actually foresee myself doing a full Be a Pro series for the first time in what has to be about 3 or 4 years by this point, because I lost interest in it. You know, the overhaul was kind of good that first year, but then after you played that first season, it was like, oh, there's nothing else. Like, I think later they added like Radiant interviews or things like that, but it was just so unfortunate and limiting. Like, you can't get sent down. There's no point. You're always a top pick. There's no real choosing your own destiny. You're kind of forced into this role, and that's not what single player modes need, in my opinion. I'm a big RPG player. I think you need the most freedom and the most customization possible for a replayable game mode. But as I said, I'm willing to stomach it at least for a full playthrough, simply because the gameplay changes are so good, in my opinion. And I think it gives new life to a lot of the modes. And yeah, we'll see about any of the small franchise tweaks they made. I know they've maybe made a couple, but we'll have to see. They're not going to be anything major, which is expected after that big of gameplay changes. Like, it's not a huge team of developers, and they don't have a massive budget, and they only have a year. And as we know, they're already, you know, how the cycle goes, they're already working on 25. So, like, that's how tight of a schedule they're always on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the one thing. Sorry,
I was going to say they've been working on 25 for a bit. It's the best way to put it.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
The one thing I was going to add is the one thing that you mentioned 25. The one thing I'm hopeful for with 25, I've just been playing EAFC 24. The evolution cards in Ultimate Team are the greatest addition to an Ultimate Team game mode ever. NHL needs that so bad. So I don't know if you guys haven't played it. But
I was just going to ask you, explain it to someone who doesn't touch HUT.
So basically, there's certain ones. So there's like Relentless Winger. There's like a center back one. There's one where you can pick anyone, but there's requirements, and there's like you can't just pick Mbappe and upgrade him. It's basically like, you know, max overall of 81 for a striker. He can have 91 pace. He can have 83 shooting. Like, they have certain requirements, and all you do is just play games and score with them, do certain objectives, and they just go up in overall, like 2 or 3.
Oh, that's cool. So
it
like, yeah,
awesome
okay.
Because I'm able to put lower players. Like, obviously you're going to get meta players and stuff like that. But like, when I got it day one, I was grinding to get a silver card just because I'm like, I want to upgrade him because he's one of my youth academy players on my favorite team. And like, he's like an up and coming superstar. Like, imagine if you could grab Bedard and just bump him up to an 82 at the start if he's like an 80 or something like that. That would just make the game so much more fun, I think, because then like Tougie could use a Bruins player that he loves. Like, Endo could use
99 Rumble.
You could get a first line center for the Bruins, Tougie. See?
I could get a first line center. It'd be a revolutionary idea. Noted 91 overall, Pavel Zacha. Let's go, baby. Yeah, so that evolution system, by the way, like NBA's had that for a couple of years, where it's been, you know, you can, honestly, so NBA's had it for a bit, and they've had a system where it would be, okay, you have this evolution card. do you want to upgrade him in this style or this style? If you want him to be more of this player type, you need to score this many points with this many layups. If you want him to be someone who drives to the net. Or it could be, oh, you want him to be a better three-point shooter. Well, then score three-pointers with them. And then that would get a boost in those specific attributes.
I like that too.
Which is awesome, right? I mean, hockey, it's pretty easy how to work that in. Score with wrist shots, score with slap shots, whatever. How do you want to upgrade this guy defensively? Body checks versus shot blocks. I mean, easy ways to work that in. And then MLB has had their what the hell? It's not the prestige system, but it's the I can't remember the term that they use.
I know what you're talking about, though. Yeah.
It is that idea of the more you play with the card, you can get him up from level 1 to level 5, and he gets the attribute increase, the parallel system. Yeah. Thank you. NHL definitely needs something like that, like anything that helps give you more options instead of just meta options, especially when so many of these card modes now are just, here's a dozen, 2 dozen cards a day. Have fun. It's just, I mean, God, we could get into the whole meta of that, of Ultimate Team and how quickly they get to 99 overall cards and stuff like that. But yeah, the evolutions would be a great addition. No doubt about that. And then to Sin's point about franchise, there are definitely no major back of the box features for franchise this year. I don't know if I'm breaking news on this. I think that they are putting a franchise, maybe not necessarily like a deep dive, but they are putting information out about franchise mode before launch, is my understanding. And again, I can already see it now. People are going to be like, LOL, that's it. LOL, they did nothing. But as Sin mentioned, the biggest thing this year was get the gameplay up to a modern level of where it should be. Yeah. So
you're right.
Exactly.
And like I said, there's a lot of changes that I'm aware of that are quality of life changes, little things that people have been asking for. There are some things that people would view as a little thing that they've been asking for that are actually bigger things, which was a benefit, again, to that Vancouver trip I had in August, where it's like, so why isn't this a thing? And then they get into explaining, oh, well, there's this, and this. And it's like, oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Say that publicly. You do yourself a big favor if you just said that publicly. Some people, of course, would always just be like, no, it's garbage no matter what. But
yeah, that's one of the things. There was a video put out by a creator called Noodle talking about a lot of game development and stuff like that. And you'd be surprised how much little stuff is actually a big, massive overtaking, and sometimes vice versa. And I think the one thing that people need to do is educate themselves. But at the same time, the people who are yelling on Twitter about everything not being the way they want it to be because, they can't have their cake and eat it too, they don't care. They don't care. They don't care about the people making the product. They care about the product itself. And they don't really care about the process that has to be done that way. It's like, oh, it should be done that way because, you had a certain amount of years. It's like, but once you know the ins and outs of how development works and knowing that half of the ideas that want to be put into the game are usually blocked by executives are kind of like, what am I feeling like? What does my grandson want to have in a video game for a sports game? And then they do it. Like, for example, a big example, 50 Cent's Blood on the Sand. Half of those features in that fucking game were because 50 Cent's kid wanted the features in the game. It's like, we need a helicopter scene. Put a helicopter scene in the game. It's like, Fitty, we're 2 months from release. No, I want a helicopter in the scene. And that's why half of the gameplay itself is just it just goes fucking wild.
So that's what happened with World of Shell. Some owner or EA owner was like, Dad, I love helicopter. And he's like, hey, in every World of Shell scene, every World of Shell game, there's going to be helicopter.
The helicopter count, baby.
Yeah. Man.
We've cracked the code.
Exactly. That's the reason why it's in there. Some exec's kid. And that's also the reason why half of the features that you want to be in the game aren't usually in the game at a certain time, because they're only given a certain amount of time to work on the game. They're only given a certain amount of development time and people to work on the game. Like I said before in this podcast, the removal of NHL 2K making a game and then EA NHL splitting up into 2 departments, one being EA NHL and EA UFC, was a detriment to the series. Because 12, 13, and 14 were great games, amazing great games, but you didn't really have to do much in terms of improving stuff when the foundation was already set very, very well. And then when 15 came around, it's like, okay, we're going to jump to the next gen. We're going to be forced to use Ignite and have no experience using that. Take 2 years off, try to put a product out, and we all know how that went.
Yeah. I did want to say, too, in regards to the whole communication thing, it's like, be open and honest. It's like, okay, so now you have Chris and Mike being open and honest, and people are just like, it doesn't matter, they're game shit. You know, there are those people that are just never going to be happy no matter how informed they are, no matter what the communication level is. That's just the way some people are. And I mean, at the same time, I can't discount that, you know, the community is this way because of how a generation of these NHL games were made, the lack of communication. Like, it's not the fault of those who came before, the likes of Chris and Mike, but they didn't help themselves in a lot of ways, and essentially just it allowed these toxic people to almost feel justified in their toxicity. And then once you get that, Jesus Christ, there's no winning at that stage. So anything else in regards to 24 that anyone was thinking, or shall we move on to talking about the Atlantic Division? And it looks like
I'm just excited. I think
that's the direction we're going.
Yeah, I think we can move on.
So you mentioned being excited. We are going to talk in reverse order yet again about last season's division standings and use that as a way to talk about the team. This week I think a lot of people saw, there was a graph that was judging good team, bad team, excited, anxious in terms of fan bases. Toronto was number one for good team, but anxious. And I'm pretty sure the Habs were somewhere in the middle of good team, bad team, but a very, very excited fan base. And I can't blame Habs fans whatsoever for being excited at this stage, because for a while, you know, we're talking 5 years ago or so, things looked bleak. And then all of a sudden, there's the COVID Cup. And the Habs are in a Stanley Cup final against Tampa, which is fucking weird. And then immediately after that, oh my God, it's terrible again. And everything's just, the world is burning down. Mm-hmm. And then two magical angels descend from hockey heaven, known as Kent Hughes and Martin St. Louis. And now all of a sudden, 1993, here we come. Fans are beyond excited about this Habs team, and I can't necessarily blame the Habs fans. Like, there's certainly more towards, I think, what the vibe for Chicago fans will be this season of like, yeah, we might be bad, but the team's still going to be kind of fun to watch. And I feel like the Habs are in that similar spot where you're primarily focusing on the young talent. And in saying that, you're talking about Caulfield, Suzuki, even Alex Newhook after the trade, second year of Slavkovsky, Kirby Dach, even Harvey Pinard. And those are just the forwards who are 24 years old or younger at this stage. How, Rahil, are you feeling about Montreal this season? Because I would totally understand if you're right on board with the excitement that most people have.
You didn't mention Kirby Dach at first, and I was about to get offended a little bit. And then you eventually said him, so it was good. I'm excited. I'm very, like, don't get me wrong. I don't think we're gonna make the playoffs. There's Habs fans out there who are saying that, like, they're just, you know, they're those Habs fans, they're those hockey fans. But you talk about, you know, Caulfield, who was injured last year. Like, how many goals is he putting up if he gets a full healthy 82 game season? Like, would anyone be shocked here if he did get 50? I'd be surprised, but I don't say I'd be shocked. Is it possible for him? Absolutely. He was one of the best goals per 60, like, before he got injured last year. I'm pretty sure he was like up there with Matthews. Like,
he had 26 goals in 46 games.
That's again not 50, but that's pretty close if you're doing goals per game there. And you talk about like Kirby Dach too. I think Kirby Dach's going to be exciting, and the reason why I think he's going to be exciting is I think back to those dark days where trade deadline's over. Bergevin comes up and goes, like first line centers, you just can't go out and get them. And Kent Hughes says, hold my beer, Bergevin, give me 5 minutes. I'm going to get you a first line center. Now, is Kirby Dach that right now? No. But the way he was playing last year, and you put him on a line with Caulfield or Safkovsky or even Newhook looks good so far in the preseason. Like, it's going to be exciting. And I think the most exciting part out of all of it, Tougie, is there's more to come. Because you got Ryan Bacher coming. He's not going to be there this year, but soon. Lane Hudson. Like, that guy looks like he is going to be a player on the back end. You start putting these pieces together. Caulfield's starting to, get better. Suzuki's getting better. They're staying healthy. Not this year, but, 2-3 years down the road, especially if this year they do bad and add another top 10 pick. I'm looking forward to, especially with Florida looking a little. I mean, we'll see how Florida does. Boston's looking a little iffy. Like, there is a bit of the changing of the guard starting to happen. Like, Buffalo's in the mix, Ottawa's in the mix now. I'm excited. It'll be a bad season, but I'm excited for a bad season.
I think the key to the Atlantic, as we're going to talk about, is there is not a single fan base here that thinks their team will not make the playoffs. As in, like, a certainty, there's no chance in hell. Like, right, we talked about the Pacific Division earlier this week. Sin and every Sharks fan pretty much knows, man, there's no fucking shot here. Yeah. We're looking for the younger talent to step up and for a high draft pick. For Habs fans, I mean, it is that scenario where if you're not as good as expected, well, hey, at least the young talent's getting the experience. But then what happens if you make the playoffs? And then all of a sudden this team takes a bigger step forward than what they were expected to. They have that young talent coming up through the system. This year they have their own first. Next year they'll have 2 first-round picks, thanks to the Sean Monahan trade. They're in such a promising spot right now. And like you said, there's the young talent that's already there and still way more to come at this stage. The question, of course, is better, same, better, about the same, or worse. They can't technically finish lower than they did last year, 8th in the Atlantic, but 31 wins. You'd have to imagine it's going to be more than 68 points on the season this year. If
they get a healthy Cole Caulfield, a healthy Nick Suzuki, I'm not saying full 82 games, but at least like 70-something games, like, do I think they're going to be 5th in the division? That's a long shot. You would need some of the other guys ahead of them to kind of tumble and stumble along their way. Do I think they'll get more than 31 wins? I think there's no doubt they get more than 31 wins this year. I think the one piece they're missing is once they get that goalie of the future, they're going to look really interesting.
You can just clone Carey Price, can't you?
I don't know. I think they're trying it, but there's some stuff going on. I don't know. I wish, though. Although, Devin Levi does look a lot like Carey Price. Have you seen that?
Oh, here we go.
If you look up Devin Levi.
I haven't seen this. Hold on.
I'm looking him up right now. There's one picture I've seen where he looks a lot. I'm actually going to send it to you guys right here.
Jeez.
A lot.
Oh my God! Is it the one with him holding the puck? Holy shit!
There's one of him holding the puck, and I just sent one of him in the dressing room.
Hold on. I think I can. Yeah, I can have this replace my.
That literally looks like you cloned Carey Price, but had to change a couple of the features a little bit.
You leave me and my son alone. It's the vibe that I'm getting from it.
Oh
he
my
literally does.
Oh my
look
God!
Like Carey Price.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Bizarre.
Can you go make some magic happen? I mean, Devin Levi, good luck, but I mean,
good luck. There goes fucking Caulfield. I'm pretty sure Buffalo's not going to trade anybody for Devin Levi, who's basically looking like to be one of the only goalies in NHL history to make a direct jump from NCAA straight to the NHL without any time in the A.
We'll just grab Carey Price and swap them, and no one will notice. It's fine.
Yeah, honestly, Devin Levi probably will be the Sabres starter this year at this rate. At least he's a very strong option for them. But we'll talk about Buffalo in a minute. If nobody else had anything else to add about the Habs, we can move on to the team that finished in 7th in the Atlantic Division last season, the Detroit Red Wings, who are in an interesting spot now where people are, and you could argue rightfully, or maybe a bit rushed, but talking about whether or not the Yzer plan is working But at this stage, I sense more optimism amongst Red Wings fans for the sole fact that Alex DeBrincat will be on their top line this season alongside Dylan Larkin and Lucas Raymond, most likely. But then you get to some of the other questions about that lineup. Like, the forward core itself is solid, but will they have that like true upper echelon guy? They have the potential for it. Their defense is an NHL franchise mode defense, is the only way to put it. Yes. Of just this jumbled, like, oh, when the hell did that guy get there? Right now, Cap Friendly has it as Jake Wallman and Moritz Seider, Ben Sherratt and Jeff Petrie.
Yeah, that was weird.
Shane Gostisbehere and Justin Hall. And then Oli Mata as a healthy scratch at the moment. Very, very weird. And then goaltenders Ville Husso and James Reimer. I don't know what to make of this team, because I do see the cause for optimism. I could see them making the playoffs. I could see them being kind of mid. I feel like there's a lot of teams in this particular division, knowing that at most only 5 teams can make the playoffs, and do you expect 5 Atlantic teams to make the playoffs? I don't know about that with the Metro, of course, that we'll talk about next week, but I genuinely do not know what to make of the Detroit Red Wings right now.
Sorry, go ahead, Sin. I'll let you go.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when I look up and down their Cap Friendly page, and I'm looking at the forwards right now in particular, I'm seeing a lot of guys who were like first round picks and like they haven't quite maybe panned out the way you'd expect them to. I mean, I'm thinking of, even you can list Daniel Sprong in that, who's now 26, Michael Rasmussen, Christian Fischer, Joe Veleno. There's a lot of these question marks there, and then some solid guys, and then they've signed some veterans like Perron. Honestly, I could really see them finishing in the basement. I don't see it. I'm going to be honest. I don't see it. I don't see what Yzerman sees in this roster. I simply don't see it. And with the Atlantic Division making the strides that they've made, and I don't know, man. Like, I obviously still love their draft pick of goddamn, now I'm blanking on the name. Seider. I love him. He's fantastic. Like, he's going to be the new prototype for defensemen. You know, you think back to when Carlson kind of took over, everyone wanted an offensive defenseman. He was like the prototype. I think when Seider really hits his stride, everyone's going to want someone like that. And you're kind of seeing it a little bit with Owen Power. It's bigger defensemen who play both sides of the puck really well. I think the time is over for these pure offensive defensemen, unless you're Cale Makar level. And let's be honest, there's only one Cale Makar. I don't care what EA says. Adam Fox is not a franchise. It's Cale Makar only. And so, yeah, I think Mo Seider that's my bold prediction. He's going to be the incredible two-way threat who's going to be probably putting up 50 plus points a season while being a really good shutdown and having that physical game.
I can't disagree with it. I mean,
but other than that, their roster's like, what? Like, I don't know. I just don't see it. And I'm ready to be surprised by Yzerman, but now it's like, man, I mean, he already struck gold once. Can he just not do it again? Did we get bamboozled in Tampa?
Yeah, their goalie situation is really, really weird too. Like Reimer, Husso, Hutchison too. So hopefully he can get a revival there.
Remember what I said about a franchise-like team of just like, yeah, those guys are all there. Yeah. This is NHL 21's 3 years into franchise mode.
Basically.
That's what this roster is.
Yeah.
Or with me, I'm 10 years in, and I'm like, oh, they got Vasilevsky as the backup. Wait, they scratched Kucherov.
I think, Tougie, you said you don't know what to describe this team as. I think you can describe them as that Homer Simpson meme where he's all macho-y at the front, and then the back's all his fat, like, plugged together.
Oh, God.
And it's like, look at our forwards. And then you look back and you see the defense, and you're like, okay, as someone who personally watched Ben Sherratt and Jeff Petrie, I can tell you the only reason they were somewhat good was because Carey Price was back there for most of the time. I am so glad they're not on my team anymore. I don't know how Wings fans are going to put up with that pair.
I'm excited to find out. That's the only thing I can say at this stage, because this division in particular is wonky. Which brings us to the team that finished in 6th last season. And I almost asked Neeler to be on X's favorite Ottawa Senators hater.
Yeah.
You know why, though, right?
For that sweet, sweet ad revenue, and it
All
worked
that
beautifully.
$13 a month from Twitter, baby. I got Wendy's today because of the Sens fans.
So
God.
funny.
Ottawa, and for Detroit, by the way, I think we kind of summed it up in terms of where we thought they'd be. More likely about the same, could be better. It's really weird to tell. And Ottawa is going to be in that same boat at the start of this season. They do have a lot to prove. Now, obviously, the big players for them, Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle. Again, Tim Stützle looking like an absolute steal of a 3rd overall pick. My God.
Yes, he is.
Sorry, Sin. Sin, you want to remind the class of how Ottawa ended up with that pick?
No,
but in terms of big changes for them this season, I mean, obviously you lose DeBrincat, you get Dominic Kubalik back. There's Vladimir Tarasenko on a 1-year deal, which is really weird. Josh Norris only played 8 games last year. They have other younger guys who might get better. Jake Sanderson got the big contract. It doesn't look that bad. And then you get to their goaltending. The biggest X factor maybe in the league at this stage. Jonas Korpisalo, $4 million a year, and Anton Forsberg, who was okay-ish. Only had a .902 last year, but has looked better at times, but only played 28 games last year due to injury. This is the hardest division to predict for me heading into this next season, because I could see the Sens in the exact same conversation as the Red Wings and the Habs. You could argue that in some regards, the Red Wings and the Habs, or the Red Wings and the Sens, are a little bit further ahead than Montreal at this stage. But does that guarantee that they can push for a playoff spot? Given, the 4 teams that did make the playoffs from the Atlantic last season still have a very good chance to do so. I just don't know what to make of them. They could be a playoff team. This could be a disaster.
They're be so top heavy. Go ahead, Rahil.
It'll be really interesting too, because I mean, looking at daily faceoff here, you got Tkachuk, Stützle, Giroux, great line, Tarasenko, Norris, Batherson. That has the potential to be one of the better second lines. A little confused though, because Shane Pinto's here, but they still got to figure out that money situation over there, and I think their bottom 6 is a little. It's okay. You take Shane Pinto out of there, and it's Ridley Gregg, Matthew Joseph, who might be on the move, Mark Kostelik, Zach McEwen, Dominic Kubalik. Like, it's not really screaming sexy to me. It's screaming, I don't know, mid.
Yeah. Sin, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think they could surprise people and make the playoffs because, again, some of their players are just so freaking good. I think Sanderson's going to take an enormous stride, and he's going to start turning into, we're going to start seeing it. And I mean, he could absolutely bust and stuff like that. I don't see it. I'm really high on Jake Sanderson, and I'm extraordinarily high on Tim Stützle. And I know, people do like to hate on him, particularly Leafs fans, particularly Neeler. But my God, that kid can play hockey, and I'm obviously a bit over the salt of him. That he could have been the Sharks' pick if everything didn't go wrong that one season after acquiring Karlsson. He's so good. Like, he's ridiculously good. I don't. If he was in Toronto, people would understand how good he is, because Ottawa's one of the more smaller Canadian markets and stuff like that. I feel like he's kind of been overlooked, which might be good for him. More of a European type player. It might be good for him to be kind of overlooked. He's a monster, and already, and the fact that he's only 21 is stupid. Like, he has a very similar trajectory to Mitch Marner. He might, and I'm trying to look up career. He may have even been ahead of Marner at the age. I'm not too sure. I'd have to pull up like comparisons and stuff like that, but he's so good. And he's a center. Everyone loves centers.
Yeah, exactly. I think you mentioned playoffs there, and I think if they're in a division like the Pacific or the Central, I think they're a playoff team. Mm-hmm. I'll talk about it a bit more later. I think the other 5 teams ahead of them are still better. Definitely. And I think one of them is going to make a significant jump, which I'm sure we can all guess who, but we'll talk about that in a bit. But I don't know, do you think in playoffs or not playoffs for Ottawa? This division is so hard.
I want to say yes because I am with Sin. I genuinely believe that they have their number 1 center in Tim Stützle, and I think they have their number 1 defenseman in Jake Sanderson. I looked it up for Stützle, by the way. Now that he's completed 3 seasons in the NHL, his first 2 seasons were worse than the pace that Mitch Marner was on. Marner was fucking good from the get-go. But it was that 3rd season where Marner hit 94 points in 82 games. Stützle had 90 in 78. So very, very similar year 3s in terms of, again, Marner out of the gates was better, but season 3 point totals, not bad. And you could argue, of course, Marner would have had better line mates when he pulled that off as a Maple Leaf. So,
and also the transition from Europe to North American play, there's always a slower pick up for those European dudes.
Very, very true. Man, I like this is that one division, like I said, where it's flip a coin.
Yeah.
You know? Will they make the playoffs? Won't they? So
I'll say one more thing about the Sens before we move on. I think for them to make the playoffs, it's all dependent on X factors. X factor, how are other teams doing? Does Boston fall off as much? Does Buffalo have that typical December, January slide where they just absolutely stink it up? You know, there's so many different X factors, so many teams waiting their turn. Also, the big X factor for them is Josh Norris fully healthy, and does he return to form? Because that's a big question. That's a major injury.
Yeah.
Is he going to return to form? I thought he was a great pick when the Sharks picked him. Jesus. And to see him do that well in Ottawa was a bit surprising. I didn't know if he was that good, but also, like who's to say? I hope for his sake that he can return to form, and for Ottawa's sake, because they got him on a lot of money right now. Nearly 8, if I recall correctly. 7, 9. Where the hell is he listed on here?
Josh Norris?
Yeah, 795 because he's on IR.
Right. I mean, Sin, the good news is you can vicariously live through the Sens because they have all the top prospects that could have been Sharks.
Pretty much, dude. Like Norris was our Couture clone, essentially. Like that's why we drafted him. He was like our Couture clone, and shit, man, he's definitely proven to be that. Perhaps even better.
The team that finished in 5th last season, the Buffalo Sabres, another toss-up of a team in my estimation here. Obviously, last season, 47 goals, the emergence of Tage Thompson. They still have a lot of younger guys in this lineup. The Dylan Cousins of the world. Dylan Cousins is only 22. JJ Peterka, Rasmus Dahlin, of course, is only 23 at this stage. Owen Power. They're another one of those teams with a lot of that younger talent in the lineup. And the biggest X factor for them has to be goaltending as well. Devin Levi was mentioned earlier. I mean, it'll be him and Eric Comrie, presumably, as the 1-2 punch. Maybe you work in Luukkonen and Tokarski as well. But Devin Levi will be given every chance to be the guy heading into the season for the Sabres. But I still can't help but wonder about that defensive depth in a way. Especially when you are paying over $6.5 million against the cap hit for Eric Johnson and Connor Clifton, who are in a good spot at, third pairing guys, but overpaid. And how could that money have been utilized otherwise to maybe make something happen? I still stand by the fact that or not necessarily the fact, but it is a fact in that they should go after Trevor Zegras. The fact that the Anaheim Ducks are dicking around Trevor Zegras still. Buffalo, what? Why? Why would you not? how many historic trades have there been between the Sabres and the Ducks? And with how teams turn over GMs. Oh, well, I can't piss off this guy because, well, then you might not make this trade down. There are 31 other teams, good sir. There's always room to make a trade. You have, I believe, it's the second highest or the third most cap space left in the league at 8.7. Force their hand. Offer sheet Trevor Zegras, because right now with that team, I could see them making the playoffs. I could see them missing. I'm a broken record with this division. Mm-hmm. But if your top 3 centers are Thompson, Zegras, and Cousins, you're a playoff team. Unless the rest of the team collapses out from underneath you. Buffalo has the chance to do something so entertaining.
I would even play him on the wing. I would play Zegras on the wing. Like if I was Buffalo, especially because Cousins making 7.1, you don't necessarily want to throw him onto the third line with that.
That's true.
Also being said, there's another little player there that's a bit of a wild card that they acquired from Vegas. That's kind of overlooked because of how good Tuck has been. But Peyton Krebs, he was a former 17th overall pick. He was Vegas's top prospect, so of course, in traditional Vegas fashion, they traded him. It worked, I know. But yeah, he's like, I don't know. I always looked at him, especially when he was on Vegas, as like, maybe middle 6 type guy. Jury's still out on him. He's now 22. He needs a shot. I think if he doesn't really get a shot, at least on the third line, maybe on the wing or something, you got to move him and try to get something back because, I don't know. I think as 17th overall pick again, like move it, use it or lose it. I think, and if you're Buffalo in the center, especially, it's so tough. Because you're seemingly so loaded there. And, if you go after Zegras, I think, number one, you play him on the wing anyway. I don't think they're gonna because the NHL is freaking lame, and they don't offer sheet anyone.
That's true.
Unless the whole Kotkaniemi thing. Yeah, I don't know. I just,
Aho.
I was going to say, we tried with Aho. Look what happened. I think Buffalo is going to be really, really interesting. Like, saying all those points are perfect. They're honestly, Zegras on the wing would just be Tuck, Thompson, Zegras. Oh, like that just, oh man, like
that's perfect.
Awesome. Like, I'm when I look at their team, like I think the thing for me too is you mentioned with Ottawa, they have that number 1 forward, they have that number 1 defenseman, they don't have the goalie. If you gave me $100 and I had to pick on who would get all 3 first. My money's going on Buffalo. Like Endo mentioned, like Devin Levi might make history here with how big of a jump he's going to make. And if he's that good and he's that like dominant as he showed a little bit there last season, like they have the pieces. They have the goalie. They have the defense. They have 2 defensemen. They can trade one of them and they still have a number 1 defenseman. They have the forwards. I'm a little high. I'm a little high on Buffalo. I have to admit. I don't know why. As a divisional rival, I don't know why I'm so high on them, but I just love the way like their team looks. Not to mention they're sitting on. Next year is going to be a little tricky because like I think every single defenseman's up. Like Dahlin's up for extension. Powers obviously another RFA up for extension, but like Thompson's on probably like top 2 best deals in the NHL. He's making $7.1 million
until 2030.
Till 20, like that's incredible. Like even Dylan Cousins, like if he continues on this trajectory, he's making 7.1. That could look like a bargain in 2 years.
Yeah.
Even. So I'm pretty high on Buffalo. I mean, like even their third line on daily faceoff, Victor Olofsson, decent. Peyton Krebs, which as Sin mentioned, if he starts to pick it up too, and Jordan Greenway, like that's a surprisingly good third line sitting right there. Like. I wouldn't be surprised to see some of those guys put 20 goals up.
They are, if not already, like they're entering a window, essentially. You get Cousins and Thompson signed to deals like that, you can't be dicking around anymore. Like this is the time to now make the most of this core that you've built up, and in some ways a little bit out of nowhere, because I don't think anybody expected Tage Thompson to be a 47 goal scorer at any point, but hey, sometimes that's how things play out. So, this year is obviously the year that they're looking like, okay, we got to take that step forward, make the playoffs. I think they very well could. But then we get into the top 4 of this division. And again, this is why it's so tough. Because, again, the Metro, as we'll talk about later on, you can't necessarily say that it would only be 3 teams from the Metro to make the playoffs. It's certainly a possibility. But it's tough to imagine a scenario where any of the top 4 from the Atlantic aren't playoff teams again. And I know the Sabres only missed by 1 point last year, but that was also in part due to the Florida Panthers, who we're going to talk about next, nearly shitting the bed. Because as we saw in the playoffs, they were not an 8 seed. They were an 8 seed in name only. And now this upcoming season, they still have a roster to be able to go right back at it. However, they aren't healthy at the start of the year. Aaron Ekblad and Brandon Montour, at least on Cap Friendly, are both still listed on the IR. And then even if they were to be healthy for the start of the year, as Sid mentioned, you come off a major injury, someone like Josh Norris with a shoulder injury, you never quite know, okay, how long is it going to take back to get into the swing of things? So their roster, while they still have the talent of the Barkoffs, the Kachucks, Verhaeghe, Anton Lundell and Sam Reinhart are still listed on their third line, which is hilarious. The idea of third liner Sam Reinhart, who had 67 points last year. And then their defense, obviously, you get the bit of a weaker look right now due to injuries. And then
Tougie, a bit.
Okay, so their current pairings. And if you haven't heard of this guy before in your life, any of these 6, just let me know. Gustav Forsling and Josh Mahora, Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Dmitry Kulikov, Nico Mikkola and Matt Kierstead.
I know 2 of them.
I don't know Matt Kierstead. I know everyone else, though.
And a healthy scratch, Boston Bruins legend Mike Riley. Habs legend as well, Mike Riley.
I was going to say, the thing with Florida, too, though, Tougie, is I don't know why every team's X factor is goalies, but Florida's not in a way goalies, because Bobrovsky has been ice cold. There's freezer burn on your steak that was in the freezer, and then he's as hot as molten lava the next year. So it's like, is he going to be in the middle? Is he going to be down here? Is he going to be up there? You don't know. And I think that's going to be the big point is if Bobrovsky's as good as he was in the playoffs, no doubt. They're probably top 3. Probably they could even fight for top 2. If he's as bad as he was some of those years where we're like, how are we paying this guy $10 million?
Right.
Then you don't know.
That is the big X factor.
Yeah, I was just remembering that Radko Gudas went to like Anaheim. And then I just was looking them up. I was like, oh, yeah, they don't have Gudas anymore. Yeah, Florida's maybe in an interesting spot. And then I also delved deep from like, oh, I'm the same age as Gudas. Why does he feel so much older than me?
Also, Habs legend Nick Cousins on the 4th line. A little respect there for Nick Cousins.
Yeah, Florida is interesting.
Yeah.
That's a general statement, or are we talking about the Panther?
Yes. Let's say yes to both. Yes. Yeah, the Panthers, man. I think they had lightning in a bottle, and they couldn't quite get it done. I could see them missing the playoffs next year, simply because their blue line continues to get freaking weaker.
Yep. But you could also see them finishing 2nd.
Yeah. Can Bobrovsky continue? Yeah, like it's so many question marks. Like
this division is so weird.
It is. It's so weird.
It's so weird.
It's worth repeating.
Like Florida could improve. They could also fall as much as Boston is likely to fall, like in this division too, with all these other teams coming up. Or all those young teams might still be a year away, and we could end up with this division. We sound like we don't know what we're talking about because there's so many unknowns in this division that it's so hard to really predict.
There is a distinct possibility that Buffalo and Ottawa could make the playoffs. Florida and Boston could miss, and no one would be truly shocked. It would just be like, I'm surprised a little, but okay. Yeah. But like, it wouldn't be a shock. If that happens in any other division, it's chaos.
Yeah. Like, it's hard to be shocked at Florida missing, as you said, because number one, Bobrovsky, he found something, but does he still have it? Like, and their blue line again got weaker. It started with them trading Uyghur, and yes, they pulled off magic, and yes, they made the Cup Finals. But let's be real, they didn't really. They did what a lot of teams do in the Cup Finals, and they took advantage of the refereeing system being what it is in the playoffs. Like they continue to get an edge like that. And I'm not discounting what they did or the skill of a lot of those players, but it's going to take them a lot to get back there. And again, I could be absolutely shit on if they win first in the division by some weird thing, and Bobrovsky does continue that good play. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. There was so much that went right for them at certain times that I don't know.
The team that finished in third last season, their in-state rivals, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and this preview has changed drastically in the past 24 hours.
Why? What happened, Tougie?
Rod DeSantis shut down Disney World or something. I fucking know. Andre, I mean, it's the first thing we're talking about. We could talk about their lines, but Andre Vasilevsky is out, presumably for the first 2 months of the season after undergoing back surgery, leaving their goaltending tandem on paper as Jonas Johansson and 22-year-old rookie, I believe, Hugo Alnefelt, 2 Swedes in net.
Okay, those are 2 I don't know. Like, I legit haven't heard of it. Was Johansson on the team last year? They play Vasilevsky so much, like you barely know who the backup is.
So Johansson, formerly, oh god, so here's Jonas Johansson's career at this stage. 1920, 6 games for the Sabres in 894. 2021, 7 games with the Sabres in 884, but then 8 games with the Avs at a 913. 2 years ago, an 885 and 9 games with the Avalanche, and a 766 in 2 games with the Panthers. And then last year on the Avs, 3 games with a 932. He is an enigma at 28 years old.
Chart. It's just
he's a true franchise mode goalie.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't know if he's going to play well or good. You don't ever know the reasons because the ratings don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Basically.
So as of right now, the Tampa Bay Lightning with Brent Seabrook on LTIR are $73,000 over the cap, which is, that's just a small move here or something like that. Yeah. You put Vasilevsky on LTIR, you get your 9.5 in space.
Oh, he's going to have a setback and he won't be back till the playoffs.
Here's the thing: is it either goes one of 2 ways. You either run that situation, which like, oh great, here we go again. I'm getting PTSD as a Habs fan. You either go through that situation, and then you're running on whoever you get. Is it going to be a waiver goalie? Is it going to be a trade? I saw Martin Jones being talked about. I saw Habs fans saying Jake Allen. Like, possible, but like then again, if Martin Jones is the starter for the Bolts, even for 2 months, like, is that like how good are they? And then how much are they going to have to claw back because of those 2 months? But then the other thing is if Vasilevsky comes back and you get someone like Martin Jones who's getting a couple $1 million, you can't bring Vasilevsky back because you're going to be over the cap. So you got to make another move. And I think this is where it's going to be really interesting with Tampa. It's like, do they go for that $950K league min goalie that's a waiver claim and they turn him into the second coming of, Binnington in that cup run? Or do they just go out and get someone good but a little more expensive and find another way to make it work? I think that kind of really does depend on how the season, or that makes the season how it goes. Because like you said, Tougie, this completely changed with this injury. Like 2 months that's a long time, guys.
Yeah. I mean, we always talk about, right, the infamous, where are you in the standings by American Thanksgiving? And more often than not, that kind of dictates how your season's going to go. That's around the time he'll be back.
Yeah.
Will they be in too far of a hole? The Florida Panthers almost were last season. It's very rare a team pulls a St. Louis and does what they did in 2019. So, again, you look at their lineup and they've had to shuffle around a lot of pieces, but their top 6 still has Hagel, Point, Kucherov, Stamkos, Chiarelli, even Connor Sherry. He's just such a lightning player. He's going to do well. Their bottom six has that defensive responsibility and the grit led by someone like Nick Paul. On defense, you still have Hedman and Sergachev and Chernak. I mean, it is another team that you look and it's like, I could see it going well because it's the Tampa Bay Lightning, but they have this Achilles heel, and how much will it hurt them? And you just can't say when it's the guy who, while I don't think that Vasi is the best goalie in the NHL right now, I think that goes to a fellow Russian. I do think he is the guy that the vast majority of fans and players alike would say, Game 7, Stanley Cup Final, who do you want in the blue paint? You're taking Andrei Vasilevsky #1.
Exactly.
That's a major, major loss for Tampa.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I just looked it up on Cap Friendly Armchair GM. I was like, let's see. So one of the posts is goalie options for Tampa. There's Samuel Montembeault, someone said, which I think he'd be too expensive. Martin Jones, who I think might even be a little too expensive. Kevin Lankinen from Nashville and Anthony Stolarz from the Panthers.
Remember Kevin Lankinen had that like stint in Chicago where everyone thought he was the second coming of Crawford, and he kind of was. He was really good for a short amount of time, then sucked.
So I mean,
and I will say, sorry, real quick, in defense of Kevin Lankinen, .916 save percentage last year in Nashville. He was actually pretty good again.
That's true. That's
respect in Kevin Lankinen.
So
I respect him absolutely.
The second post, that the goalie option was actually the second one. I did every Tampa Bay trade. The first one, and I think this perfectly describes the situation. I'm not even going to tell you what the options are. The title is "Hell Nah, Bruv, This Team is Done." That's it. And I think they go and trade for like Eli Tolvanen and Lankinen. They're just like, screw it. This is a one-off season. And you mentioned the American Thanksgiving thing. I would not be shocked to see. Again, I'm gonna say it. Like, I feel like I could see them missing, and I could see them being bad by the end of November, and then it's just too high of a hill to climb. It's also Tampa Bay. I wouldn't be shocked to see them make the playoffs.
Yeah, they're not as deep as they used to be, but I really like the pickups of Glendening and Isamont.
Yeah,
and of course Sharks legend Isamont, but He's got that tenacity that's I always thought was going to be perfect for playoffs, and it's just a shame that he was on the Sharks when he was, because we were making the playoffs. Yeah, I've always liked Glendening. He's just such a reliable kind of depth fourth liner type. So I think they've done a good job, at least trying to replace some of what they had in their back-to-back cups and 3 straight appearances.
Yeah.
There's certain guys you can't replace, sure, but I still. You like their chances. It's just that, what do they do? How much do they depend on Vasilevsky?
Exactly.
And can their role? Yeah, I honestly, if Vasilevsky was going to miss like the whole season, I would say this is the team that goes after Zegras.
Yeah.
You go after Zegras, you'll get Vasilevsky back, and everyone's going to bitch and moan that you subvert the cap. Who cares? Because everyone does it at this point, and everyone would do it if they could. And multiple cups have been won by multiple teams doing this exact same thing. Chicago, Tampa Bay, I'm sure others. Those are the ones in most recent memory that I can think of.
Yeah, I remember the Tampa one very well.
Yeah.
The team that finished in second last season, the Toronto Maple Leafs.
First round exit next.
And then that brings us to the...
Sorry, I'm a Habs fan. I had to say that.
I mentioned that chart earlier, the whole good, bad, optimistic, pessimistic, and the Leafs were that top team of good team, most pessimistic fan base. And you can understand why, because despite getting past the first round to then immediately get spanked in the second by Florida, essentially took away all the positive energy that was delivered by winning in the first round.
Yeah.
And obviously that led directly to the rather tumultuous offseason, the departure of Kyle Dubas. And at one point, the team looking kind of rough. It was salvaged by the free agent signings of Tyler Bertuzzi and Max Domi that provides a pretty good amount of depth to this lineup. Yeah. Lines can always change. Cap Friendly has it right now with Bertuzzi, Matthews, Marner on the top line, which, Jesus Christ. Matthew Nyes with John Tavares and Sam Lafferty. Interesting. A third line of Max Domi and Calle Jarnkrok on the wings as they attempt to move William Nylander back to center.
Here's the thing. I think the Domi, Nylander, and Jarnkrok line is actually the second line. They just don't want to say that Tavares got demoted.
That's fair, honestly.
Yeah.
I will have to see how it's utilized, but I think that's I think that's a very real possibility in the media landscape as it stands, which is all, as we know, what Toronto is.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
I think they're so much weaker than last year.
The
thing that could save them is Bertuzzi. Continue, sorry.
It pains me to say this. Like, why not go Tavares, Nylander, Tavares, Nyes, and then go Robertson or Jarnkrok, Domi, Lafferty? I saw Domi play center in Montreal. He was okay. Third line center, that's okay. And I mean, maybe they want to just like disperse the offense a little bit, which isn't that bad of a thing. But like, again, it's like, you ever seen that meme? I'm all memes today, apparently. You ever seen the meme of the two dragons and then the one like goofy dragon?
Yep.
John Tavares, Matthew Nyes, Sam Lafferty. Like, ooh, like, no disrespect to Lafferty. He could put up like 20, 25 goals with those kind of teammates. But like, it's just off a little bit. You know what I mean?
No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. Sorry.
I feel like for Sam Lafferty, it's almost like maybe he could be Zach Hyman. I feel like that's what they're kind of leaning towards. The guy who might be a little bit more gritty, the effort guy. And then, the young guy, Matthew Nyes, who only got 3 regular season games and then got hurt in the playoffs. But need to mention their fourth line as well. Nick Robertson penciled in there right now. We'll see what happens. David Kampf at 2.4. Again, I like David Kampf as a fourth liner. 2.4. You'd like to spend less on a fourth liner who can do what he does.
Yep.
And then you have Ryan Reeves.
They're going to get 20 games out of him max. Sorry. And how many fucking years did they sign him for? 3? Jesus.
3 years. 2026.
Yeah.
For how much is his contract?
$135.
That's so bad.
That's a little iffy. Another thing too, and maybe you guys have some insight on this. They're $3 million over the cap with LTIR, and that's with 13 forwards, 7 D, and 3 goals. So like,
yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do.
I'm just so confused. Like, I'm just like, I love it when it's like the season is 2 weeks away and you're just looking at a team like, how are you gonna get there? Like, I don't know. Like, you're just like, you're fumbling the map, still trying to figure it out. And I mean, Brad Tree Living, he's an all right GM. He'll work some magic. The other thing too is this is also I maybe I'm a little biased. This is also the GM who just had the whole Matthew Tkachuk fiasco and everyone in Calgary wanting out. And I get he's in Toronto now, but like that was literally just a year ago. Not even a year ago. That was months ago. So like, it'll be interesting to see how he fits in. I mean, Sheldon Keefe's still there. That was, I think, the bigger surprise for everyone that he was still there instead of Dubas actually left. They're a playoff team. I could see this team doing. I've always said I feel like the Leafs needed to win a round and experience it, and then they could push forward and they would be, they'd be that team that can actually make the second, third round consistently. I could see this lineup doing it. I could also see this lineup not doing it.
Funny how that's a trend for every goddamn team.
Every Atlantic team. You can do it, but you can also not do it.
Right.
To circle back and also expand a little bit, you mentioned like they may be hoping Lafferty is like going to turn out to be a Hyman type player. I feel like that's why they picked up Bertuzzi. That move of picking up Bertuzzi, you can say Domi too a little bit. I think though that was the best Leafs move, was picking up Tyler Bertuzzi. That guy was a fucking monster in the playoffs, an absolute monster. Despite we all know what happened. He was he was sick. He looked like he had enough skill. He was gritty. He wanted it. He was in front of the net. He was deflecting pucks. He was hitting people, and he was forechecking. And that is what the Leafs obviously need and wanted. But it's not, it's not just the typical we need sandpaper. Like, the dude is skilled too.
He can score.
He can score, and he was, incredible in the playoffs. I think he was one of the Bruins' best 3 players. I would say him, McAvoy, and Marchand were their best 3 players for them in that round 1. And
then what happened?
In that only round they played for somehow. Yeah. I hate the Klingberg signing. It's a poor man's Erik Karlsson. It's a fucking poor man's Erik Karlsson. It's not the time to get him. Why? You have Riley.
I was going to say for the Klingberg thing really quickly. 4.1. I am still dumbfounded at how he commanded 4.1 million. I don't get it. And like you said, or we're saying as I cut you off, they have Morgan Riley as that offensive leader. And it's that idea of like, you're the Toronto Maple Leafs. You could run a power play with 5 forwards and then the other one with Morgan Riley as the lone defenseman captaining it. Like, you have that firepower to do that and to go for it.
I think the one thing that signing does give the Leafs, which is a bit interesting. I was listening to the Steve Dangle podcast. Steve was talking about it. No one on the Leafs really shoots from the point that much. Klingberg shoots a lot from the points. I think one preseason game he had like 8 shots on goal. You put him on power play 1. Maybe Matthews gets a little bit better looks. Maybe Nylander or Marner gets better looks, or maybe just Klingberg gives you a different element to that first unit. I could see that being interesting, especially since the Leafs just let go of their power play coaches. Now I think he's on Washington. He's the head coach,
yeah,
I believe. So I could kind of see that, but yeah, I don't know.
Shout out to Spencer Carberry.
I feel like the Leafs are going to deeply, and maybe not instantly, but very quickly regret getting rid of Kyle Dubas.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think it was a terrible idea when it was done. I think it's even more terrible now after seeing what Treliving's done. Like I said, Bertuzzi's the only saving grace, and everyone was trying to get Bertuzzi. Let's be real. After what he did in the playoffs, everyone. So I don't think Treliving sees something. He saw what everyone else saw. And whatever the fuck else he's seeing, I don't see it. A lot of other people don't see it. Some of the Leafs faithful do, who believe you can never ever criticize the organization. I don't know. We'll see. I think they're gonna. I don't think there's any way they miss the playoffs. I think there's about 0 chance they get past the first round. I don't know, but they could be disappointing in a lot of ways. You can make the playoffs and be disappointing, and I think the Leafs. I think that is a big chance that they make the playoffs and are disappointing.
So Detroit will see, Ottawa will see, Buffalo will see, Florida will see. We should just rename the Atlantic. We'll see.
The episode title is going to be, well, we'll see.
We'll see.
It brings us to the ultimate we'll see for this upcoming season. The team that finished not only first in the NHL last season, but with the greatest regular season record of all time of 65 wins and 135 points. Only to lose in the first round of the playoffs to the Florida Panthers and subsequently have to move on from Taylor Hall, from Nick Foligno, who both end up in Chicago. Sorry, my body's rejecting this. And who also see the departures of one Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci. So this team. Let's talk about this really quickly. The top line is still slated to feature Brad Marchand and David Pastrnak.
That's really good.
Unless they were to break them up and have it as a split, but you still have Brad Marchand, the new captain of the team, and David Pastrnak. Currently expected to be centered by Pavel Zacha, who is coming off a career best season of 51 points in 82 games. 57 points, excuse me, in 82 games. The second line, James Van Riemsdyk,
okay,
Charlie Coyle, and Jake DeBrusk. I get the reference. We'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Third line, Trent Frederick, Morgan Geeky, and friend of the show, AJ Greer. A new father, AJ Greer. Congratulations. Somewhat recently. And a fourth line of Milan Lucic and potentially former first-round pick John Beecher and Jakub Lauko.
This is honestly the steepest roster fall-off I've seen in recent memory, like just on paper. And I'm sorry to laugh, but it is kind of funny.
This is what happens when you go for it.
I have 2 words. Playoff team.
Now, is he sarcastic or
no? Dead serious. Dead serious. Huh. I'm gonna tell you why.
Well, they're a good playoff team, but they have to make it. I don't know if they will.
I'm gonna tell you why. Tougie's a Patriots fan. I'm a Patriots fan. Throughout the NFL season, the seasons I've watched, where Brady started to look washed and everything, all this stuff, the one thing I was always told is never bet against Brady, which served pretty well. Look at how greatest quarterback of all time, greatest football player of all time.
Damn right.
The amount of times we think this in the Boston Bruins, we're like they're dead. We defeated it, and they rear their head out and pull off some witchcraft, voodoo magic, and just shock everyone. I can't. As much as I look at this roster and I'm like they're not a playoff team, I just can't because I know they're gonna figure out a way and they're gonna pull off some crazy crap and make it somehow. Tell me that's not how the Bruins have been in the last 5 years. There's been that. At least
I'm gonna agree with you there, and then I'm gonna speak from my experience as a Sharks fan, where we went through something similar. Where there's this period of time where like, oh, you guys are done now. Missed the playoffs in 2015. We come back, we make the Cup Finals in 2016. Okay, you're gonna be done pretty soon after that. Thornton and Marleau are too old. We make the Conference Finals in 2019, and you get that feeling of like, okay, we're gonna keep going, but then all of a sudden, too much is lost. It's too much. We lost Thornton. We lost Marleau. Other guys start declining. I think for Boston, this may be the too much part. It may just be too much that they have to replace. 2 centers.
Yep.
2 centers. Your top 6 centers are gone. Taylor Hall, who hit or miss in the playoffs, but he's great. He's a skilled-ass player. That's another top 6 player. That's half of your top 6 gone. That's tough. That's so tough. Now you're going to see, okay, is Zacha that good? Or did he benefit from favorable matchups because the rest of the team was so good? There's a lot on the table. I know it's a we'll see. I could see them making the playoffs. I think if they make the playoffs, that's a good playoff team. They're going to fuck you up. But they have to make the playoffs first, and the regular season's going to be tough on them.
And I agree with everything you said. But I've had too much PTSD of saying this team is done and this team rears its head back. Yeah. And I do agree with you saying like there is that time eventually, but it's like, remember when everyone was saying Brady was washed that one season where he missed the first 4 games because he was suspended, and then all of a sudden he just pulls out another Super Bowl out of his hat? I think that was last year until the playoffs started. No offense, Tougie. But like, I'm also just like, I can't like, I'm scared to say they're going to miss the playoffs because I've said it so many times and they still make it. So, again, title of the episode. We'll see.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, Boston Bruins just need a system QB. Got him.
Tom Brady, first line center.
Honestly. Let's try it. I will say, like, the key for them is hopefully the defensive structure and the head coaching. This is a team that should be able to compete on a nightly basis due to structure and effort. It is a team built upon that with some high-end skills sprinkled in the form of David Pasternak.
Yeah.
But that defense is still Grizzlick McAvoy, Lindholm, Carlo, Forbert, and Shattenkirk at the moments. With Allmark and Swayman in goal. I agree with Sin in that, obviously, they're not hitting 65 fucking wins. No one's ever hitting 65 wins again. Yeah, let's see if that comes back to haunt me. It's one of those things where I do think genuinely it's either, they're going to be really tough to beat, defensively sound, physical, especially once you get to the playoffs, or it's going to be, it just doesn't work. And you're losing games 2-1, 3-1 because you can't get goals on the board. And episode title being what it is, I'm not doom and gloom about this season, but if you were to tell me that the Bruins missed the playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised, because you are banking on guys like 34-year-old JVR to stay healthy and to contribute. You're banking on Morgan Geekie to still prove that he in fact can keep up on that upward trajectory and be a 30-point third-line center. You're banking on Milan Lucic still being a contributor, which in fairness, Lucic had 19 points in 17 games last year. If he can replicate that on the fourth line, you're feeling pretty good about it. Yeah. It's not too bad. And then the younger guys like the Beechers and the Laukos who are trying to break through. Danton Heinen might very well be in the mix on the team as well. So all of this means that the Boston Bruins will somehow have the best offense in the NHL. Because
exactly.
I will say I loved Montgomery. Right? Who the fuck was your new coach? Was it Montgomery?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I loved his offensive strategy. I texted Tougie multiple times when I was catching a Bruins game. I'm like, dude, their offensive strategy is insane. Like, it's absolutely sick. They look like they're on a freaking power play. They're doing the umbrella and shit, and they still got the Bruins tenacity on every single puck. But yeah, I think they could be really good. But yeah, you also need individual skill to pull that off too. And it's a big we'll see.
Yeah. 2023 trade deadline, Tyler Bertuzzi. 2022, I'm trying to think, was there a big acquisition in 2022, Tougie?
Wasn't that Hall?
That was Taylor Hall at that point, right?
2021, was there a big one too?
No, that was the Leafs.
I can go to that Bruins trade.
So I see Hall in 2021. 2022 looked like Lindholm.
Yes.
And then 2023 was Tyler Bertuzzi. So as much as I think this team is dead, all of a sudden in January 2023, they're going to go out and get Trevor Zegras or some star top six forward, and he's going to play on the first line, and this team's going to make the goddamn playoffs. I hope I'm wrong. That's 3 years in a row they've gotten a stud at the trade deadline. They're going to get like, I don't know, like they're going to get Dubois. I know he just signed an 8-year contract. I don't care. They'll find a way. I don't know. Man.
I will say
I kept on offering up Tomas Hertl to the Bruins, but they didn't want to give me Swayman and a few firsts. So
yeah. By the way, I'll throw it back to this 2018. Do you remember who the Bruins' big trade deadline acquisition was?
Can you give us a hint?
He came over from the New York Rangers.
Yager. Just kidding. I don't even know. Nash. It was Nash.
Yeah.
Rick Nash.
Was it a jackal? It's a jackal.
So fair point, fair play about their tendency to go for it. But like Sin mentioned, eventually the time runs out, and that's the question: has that last kind of grain? Those last couple of grains of the hourglass were circling the second Bergeron and Krejci announced their retirements. Now it's, did they fall, or is there still that little bit of life to hold on while you sprint to get more sand? That's the big question, and the best analogy that I can come up with after nearly 2 hours.
You know who has a logjam at center? The Los Angeles Kings.
But who?
I'm not the Bruins fan. I'm just throwing stuff at the end to make it spicy. I don't know. I just looked at the Kings. I was like,
I would say Byfield, because he's number one. Seems like a Bruins player. Number two has been pretty shit so far.
Number one center for the Boston Bruins, Philip Danault.
Oh God!
From one French Canadian king to another. Give me Philip Danault. That's how bad things are. And I'm like, please, Philip Danault, top line center. But he's defensively responsible. He's handsome, and he was born 1 year to the day before I was. We share a birthday, February 24th. So
why do I feel like he'd put up 82 points with Pastrnak and Marchand on his wing? That would be terrifying. Oh my God.
Philip Danault, 70, 80 point guy. with Selke caliber defense, French Canadian, we're willing this into existence.
I don't know why I'm willing it into existence. I'm a Montreal fan. I should be willing the opposite.
He only makes $5.5 million for this year and 3 after. He gets a 10-team no trade list at the end of this year, so now's the perfect time to trade him before that no trade kicks in.
And guess what? Guess what LA needs? A goalie.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Why am I not a GM? Someone hire me, please. Look at this. I'm making trades happen.
Sir, Phoenix Copley and Cam Talbot. They're fine.
That reminds me of that raccoon over the trash can. Like, hey, don't make fun of my garbage. No offense to Phoenix Copley or Cam Talbot, but like,
the episode title is either going to be Will See or Meme Machine at this point. I'm not sure which.
Or don't make fun of my garbage. I like that.
You know,
honestly, that should be it.
I think that's it. I think Sin wins out right at the very end. Gentlemen, this has been a fun one, to say the least. You know, for those on the video side of things, we'll allude towards it now. Endo had to go play hockey, so we let him go. It was fine. Of course, you can find Endo on the Twitter and Twitch side of things at Endurance, not Endurance, but Endurance M. He streamed earlier today. Like I said, that soundtrack breakdown, which I was tempted to make a video about that, but at the same time, music is so subjective. Like, even if it's a song I don't like, I'll never say it's trash. Like, there was that song a couple years ago, Ceiling Fan. I don't know if you guys remember that, which was
the first thing I do is I turn off the soundtrack because I don't want to have to worry about turning it on and off when I make content, and I don't care enough. If I'm going to listen to music, I'm going to listen to my music.
Yeah, exactly. So it is, it is a factor at this stage of just like, hey, the streaming world and how that affects the soundtrack. But like I said, I'll never be like, that song's shit. It's like, I don't like that song, and that's okay. But clearly it's for someone else. So, I can't care about soundtracks that much. I'll rip you to shreds about bad ratings, and you can check out those videos on the YouTube side of things. But Rahil, now is the stage is yours, the floor is yours, everything that you have going on, my friend.
Oh man, I just appreciate you guys having me on again. This is one of my favorite podcasts to come on, just because it's just 2 hours of just chatting, shooting the shit, doing voice impressions of Mike Babcock and everyone else. That was something special. No, but appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me and letting me join you guys. Excited for NHL 24. Can't announce stuff yet, but I think you'll be seeing a lot more of me on 24. And I'm excited, man. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully it's a good game for all of us. Hopefully we all can tolerate it till 25 comes out and not give up by December, but we'll find out, guys.
So with that, again, thank you all very much for joining us. We will be back next week with our last 2 division breakdowns before the start of the regular season. Obviously, we'll probably talk a lot about NHL 24 as well. And it is worth noting our guests for our next podcast, Monday the 2nd, we will be breaking down the Central Division with the one and the only, the illustrious, you knew it had to be, Deke Slayer returns to the podcast. It had to be. We'll talk all about his Arizona Coyotes and every other team, including some guy in Chicago who's apparently really good. We'll get to that. But for now, thank you all very much for joining us. We will see you next week. Until then, have a good one. Take it easy and be good people. I'm going to steal Dead Meat James's sign off because it's a good sign off. Watch that channel, by the way, even if you don't like horror. And watch Sin's channel and everyone's channel. Support people, except shit people. I'm going to cut this off well before I got to this point of this tangent.